Good day, everyone. This is our lesson on conducting qualitative researches. Now, I know that many of you would like to venture on quantitative researches. Some of you have mixed methods, or we say quanti and quali, while there are some of you who would like to venture on qualitative research. And who knows, in the future, you might also want to conduct a qualitative research as well. Now, let's try to see the things that we can get from conducting qualitative research because this is one interesting approach in research, and we can gather so much information, realizations, if we are going to follow the rigor of conducting qualitative research. Now, not all of us are equipped with the skills, the knowledge that are very much needed in conducting a research like this one. But we can learn and we can explore. To be honest, I have not done a pure qualitative research in the past. I have done document analysis, but my approach in the data that I gathered was more on quantitative, although I have conducted mixed method researches before. So I will be speaking on what I know about qualitative research, and I am trusting you as independent learners to go over what you can look for in the internet about qualitative research. And when it is already time for you to conduct one, you have that initiative to teach yourselves when it comes to conducting a qualitative research, or look for an expert who will help you in conducting such. So Earl Bobby, author of The Practice of Social Research, says, "We have been doing social research all our lives. But the question is, why? Why are we doing social research all of our lives? It is because as we brush elbows with people, or as we meet other people in our lives, we spend time observing their actions, actuations, attitudes, or behavior. And that could be the ground for doing a qualitative research. The idea becomes clearer when we turn to the most obvious method of making observations, and that is through a qualitative or field research. If we want to understand deeper the things that people are experiencing, their behaviors, their actions, their choices, their past, their present, we can do so much about it if we are going to conduct a qualitative research. So who usually does observations? Observation, we know, is a skill that is available to everyone. We are all observants. But it can be used to a great extent by a researcher using qualitative methods. Now, what is the difference between quantitative and qualitative research? Let's take a look at this table comparing what is quantitative and qualitative research. So quantitative, it is a type of research in which the researcher asks specific and narrow questions, while for qualitative, it could ask broad or general questions. Because if we have that broad or general questions, we are tend to explore more. We are not bounded by limitations. Rather, we are directed to identify more details, get more details, observe more about the people or the event that we are observing. Because we have to go deeply in that situation, in the life of a person, in that history, in that document, and many other forms of sources of our data for a qualitative research. For quantitative, it collects numeric data from participants, while for qualitative, it collects data consisting largely of words or text from participants, which can be gathered through written or oral interview, observations, narratives, biographies, documents, those in the archives, and many others. Quantitative research analyzes these numbers using statistics. So you are going through educational statistics or statistical methods for research, which you can use for your quantitative researches or for your quanti-quali researches. While for qualitative, we need to be equipped with how to describe and analyze the words or text that we have gathered to develop some theories, a framework, a list of things or themes for us to treat the data that we have gathered. For quantitative, it conducts an inquiry in an unbiased, objective manner because we rely on numbers. We rely on what mathematics say based on what we have computed using the different statistical tools. But for qualitative, based on references, sources, it can solely be based on the interpretation of the researcher or the researchers. That's why it's less subjective, but more of a subjective and biased manner. But there are some things that we can do to control our biases, like comparing it to a theory or using related studies for us to objectively discuss the things that we have gathered in a qualitative research. However, the tendency, as I have mentioned, is that the interpretation of the data for qualitative researches will be very much influenced by the interpretation or personal perspective or point of view of the researcher or the researchers. So for example, surveys provide data from which you can calculate the percentage of dropouts from a school, compute for retention, establish relationships between age or gender to certain variables, or for instance, show whether some factors cause the trends in dropping more consistently than anything else. So you can see here the dimensions of descriptive statistics and inferential statistics, test of relationships, predictive analysis. Now, while qualitative research yields data not easily reduced to numbers, sometimes it cannot be quantified. But there are instances that we can group statements together and then identify how many statements have the same idea. So that could be a quantitative part for the qualitative research. Now, for instance, the researcher may note several factors that would give an in-depth explanation to the behavior of dropping out. So we go into interviewing these students on their reasons on why they are dropping out. But we don't simply ask for a specific answer, because for that answer alone, we can have follow-up questions for us to better understand those reasons. Now, this gives the researcher a greater chance of understanding the phenomenon than mere numbers. Now, this, for example, only one student mentioned this reason, but in reality, this reason is very important to be discussed. It has more details to it, and it gives a significant finding to that qualitative research. So what are the purposes and functions of qualitative research? So first, it enables researchers to observe social life in its natural habitat. Unlike in answering a survey questionnaire, wherein people can easily conceal their true feelings or they could be dishonest in answering the survey questionnaires, we can have more authentic data while observing people or events in its natural habitat, wherein we do not intervene and we are just there sitting, letting them do what they do, letting them talk what they have to talk or what they have to say. And that could be valuable information for us to better understand that person, that group of people, or that event or phenomenon. It produces a deeper appreciation of many social phenomenon that can be possible through other observational methods, provided the researcher does it in a deliberate, well-planned, and active way. You know, when we say active observation, that means that all your senses should be actively working, that you should be there. You should put yourself there, your eyes, ears, nose, okay? All those things should be active. You see clearly, you hear clearly, you feel clearly, you smell clearly, whatever you have to sense in that particular place. It also facilitates the discovery of meanings associated to a phenomenon by studying cases intensively in a natural setting, or it could be subjecting the resulting data to analytic induction. So here are some strengths of conducting qualitative research. First, it gives the researcher a comprehensive perspective on the subject matter being explored. Remember, a qualitative research asks broad questions, which means if we have a broad question, we are not limited. Therefore, we can gather more, making it a comprehensive perspective. So that is what is meant by having a comprehensive perspective when it comes to conducting qualitative research. Another is researchers may recognize nuances of attitude and behavior that might escape researchers using other methods. Because we are active in our observation, we can identify these nuances, those things that could be influencing the data that we can gather from that observation or for doing that kind of research, because it will be difficult for people to conceal their true feelings, their behaviors, their actions, especially when you are a non-participant observer in an observation for a qualitative research. Or in an interview, okay, for example, in an interview, you can look at the non-verbal expressions or gestures that could be indicating a different idea compared to what the interviewee is saying in your interview. The data collection and analysis process can be adopted as new ideas or patterns emerge. Meaning, when you are going to conduct a qualitative research, you may be able to discover a new pattern for a behavior or a new pattern for an event for a specific group of people. Because considering that we have different contexts, circumstances, it could mean that a pattern in a specific ethnic group could not be applicable or could be different in another ethnic group. So we can discover here patterns or new ideas. And they are not rigidly decided beforehand. But here are some weaknesses of conducting qualitative research. So the real-world setting often makes qualitative research unreliable because of uncontrolled factors that affect the data. If you are going to observe this day, it is very possible that what you will observe the next day will be different because of the things that are changing in our environment. So if you want to have a reliable observation data or a reliable data in a qualitative research, we should do it long term so that we can see if these patterns are cyclical or is it irregular or is there really a common pattern in a long-term study. Now, due to the researcher's primary role in analyzing and interpreting data, qualitative research cannot be replicated. It cannot be replicated because, again, the tendency is that the interpretation will be based on the interpretation of or perspectives of the researcher or researchers. The researcher decides what is important and what is irrelevant in data analysis, so interpretations of the same data can vary greatly. That means that we cannot use the extracts of the interview of a previous qualitative research for our own research or to analyze it again, because definitely there will be variations on the interpretations. Small samples are often used to gather detailed data about specific contexts. Despite rigorous analysis procedures, it is difficult to draw generalizable conclusions because the data may be biased and unrepresentative of the wider population. This is one limitation of doing qualitative research. It will be too tedious to be surveying or to be interviewing or observing a big number of people compared to quantitative research where we can float our questionnaires, our tools or instruments to 100, 200, 500, 1,000, more than 1,000 respondents. That's why this is one weakness of doing a qualitative research. So many of our qualitative researches are really focused in a specific group of people because we can control the number of respondents or participants or subjects of our study. And it will be really focused on that particular population or group of persons only. So all the software can be used to manage and record large amounts of text like the tool or the software that they are using in qualitative data analysis. We have Max QDA. So data analysis often has to be checked or performed manually. And this is quite difficult for many researchers, how to treat qualitative data. Now, the most common approach in treating qualitative data is through thematic analysis. But again, it would depend on the research design of your qualitative research. So here are some topics appropriate for field or qualitative research which you might be interested in studying in the future. So we have study of attitudes and behaviors best understood in their natural setting, especially now that we are in the COVID-19 pandemic. We have lots to explore about the lived experiences of frontliners, nurses, doctors, teachers, law enforcers, study of social processes over time, comparing phenomena before the pandemic and after the pandemic. That is very possible. Now, but are these the only topics for qualitative researches, or can we do more in qualitative research? So it is commonly conducted in humanities and social sciences like anthropology, education, history, and even in health sciences like in-depth case studies. But qualitative research can be done in almost all disciplines. We just need to find the right topic where we can conduct a qualitative research. So here are some qualitative research question examples from Scriber. How does social media shape body image in teenagers? So this one will be descriptive in nature, and we need to gather several things about how social media shape body image, and we can gather that from teenagers. And it will be difficult for us to formulate that body image if we are going to use quantitative data. It is always better to use a set of qualitative data for this kind of research. How do children and adults interpret healthy eating in the UK? So this one is how children and adults interpret, meaning we need to get how they interpret. So this is basically a qualitative research. They cannot provide an interpretation through quantitative data, right? What factors influence employee retention in a large organization? Now, this one is removing the idea that we have already the predetermined factors. Rather, let us identify the factors from the employees themselves. We will not give them choices and that they would agree to this or not, because that could preempt the response that we can get from them. Rather, we make it open and let them talk and let them tell stories on why they are living or staying in an organization. How is society experience around the world? So this one is more on lived experiences, and there is no questionnaire for this, but it's an open-ended question as well. We also have, how can teachers integrate social issues into science curriculum? So here are some elements of social life applicable to qualitative research according to Laughlin and Laughlin in 1995. So it could be about our practices. We can focus on practices of a specific ethnic group. However, there are some issues if you're going to study a specific ethnic group or an IP community, because we need to get the permission of the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples for us to be able to study those Indigenous peoples communities. We can have our researches focus on encounters, like the studies for those who have encountered encountered a bitter past during the martial law. That could be a good topic for qualitative research. Episodes, a specific episode in a group of person, like for teenage mothers. It's a very critical episode for teenage women, that the early pregnancy during their teenage years. That's a good episode to explore on their anxieties, their worries, their stories of successes or struggles. It's a good topic for qualitative research. We also have roles, like understanding the feelings of educational leaders during this time of the pandemic. That is a very good study as well. Or experiences of teachers. But we already have so much about teachers and students. How about our educational leaders? Relationships. There are many studies studying marriages, especially those marriages which have conflicts, like both are working, or it is the mother who is working, or both have no work, or whatever kind of marriage that we can explore on. Groups of people, we also have organizations, so I'll just go over this list now. I think you can already think of topics that could be focused on these elements of social life. Settlements, we also have social worlds and lifestyles or subcultures. So these are now the approaches to qualitative research, or this could be your specific research designs in conducting a qualitative research. First, so qualitative research is used to understand how people experience the world. While there are many approaches to qualitative research, they tend to be flexible and focus on retaining rich meaning when interpreting data. So common approaches include grounded theory, ethnography, action research, phenomenological research, and narrative research. They share some similarities but emphasize different aims and perspectives. So let's go over these approaches one by one. So first, we have the grounded theory. So here, researchers collect rich data on the topic of interest and develop theories inductively. So this is where researchers develop a theory based on the rich amount of data that they can gather from their participants or respondents. Of course, we need a foundation for us to develop a theory. And our foundation here is the rich data, okay, of our research study. We also have ethnography. So researchers immerse themselves in groups or organizations to understand their cultures. You are trying to map out the things that are happening in a specific ethnic group or a specific organization. When we see ethnography, it doesn't have to be like an IP community, but it could be an organization like a school or a community or a hospital. That could be ethnography. So we also have an action research, where researchers and participants collaboratively link theory to practice to drive social change. Like in Japan, a very famous approach in teaching mathematics would be the lesson study. Okay? And when they have that lesson study, okay, there are several collaborators for them to develop a lesson plan, and then that lesson plan will be implemented, and then there will be observers, there will be more knowledgeable others, there will be moderators, and then after implementing the lesson, they will gather for a post-lesson discussion, and then they will collaboratively discuss what transpired during the lesson implementation, and then brainstorm new ideas that they can do to make the lesson better so that in its next implementation, it will achieve better learning success for the students. We also have phenomenological approach. Okay? So researchers investigate a phenomenon or event by describing and interpreting participants' lived experiences. So we try to identify what happened to these participants during this particular stage in their life. Like my example of teenage mothers. And of course, we have a narrative research where researchers examines how stories are told to understand how participants perceive and make sense of their experiences. So this is quite similar with phenomenological, but here it's more of telling stories. For phenomenological, it's more on describing the experience, but not actually giving so much details of what happened. But for narrative research, the story has to be told with so much details as possible, and how these people interpreted that particular narration of their life in the past. So what are some qualitative research methods as well? We have observations. So we can do qualitative research through observations. Now we can have several tools that we can use here. But again, there are some issues if we would like to record through our smartphones or an audio recorder. Interviews, it could be one-on-one. It could also be virtually. Because of the pandemic, we can now do our interviews virtually, right? Through Google Meet or Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Skype or Messenger call. Focus groups. So asking questions and generating discussion among a group of people. So compared to interview, which could be one-on-one, focus group is calling together all the participants who can give essential data for your qualitative research. Like calling together all the elders in a specific ethnic group, because these elders have enough wisdom about the specific ethnic group or IP community, and they can give so much information about the practices, the norms, the traditions of that specific community. Surveys, where we distribute questionnaires with open-ended questions. That is an acceptable research method for qualitative studies. We can also have secondary research or written materials, like we collect data from text, images, audio or video recordings, or those in our archives, like books, newspapers, any document, or any tangible output that we can explore on and analyze. For example, to research the culture of a large tech company, we decide to take an ethnographic approach. So this one is understanding the culture of a large tech company. It's an organization. So you work at the company for several months and use various methods to gather data. So you take field notes with observations and reflect on your own experiences of the company culture. It is very possible that this researcher here was hired in that large tech company. How? It could be It could be luck, or it could be because that researcher is also needed in the company. But the main point here is that the researcher is able to observe the large tech company in its natural setting without causing too much disturbance or distraction to the people in that company or in that organization. You distribute open-ended surveys to employees. Now, this one is deliberate already because you are going to be distributing your instrument across all the company's offices by email to find out if the culture varies across locations. So you conduct in-depth interviews as well with employees in your office to learn about their experiences and perspectives in greater detail. So see, there is a triangulation here, okay, because the data will be coming from three different qualitative research methods. We have observations, we have questionnaires, and we also have interviews. And by doing so, we can check if our data from three different sources are aligned. If there are conflicts, meaning that there could be some confusions or inconsistency about the belief or about people behave in the company. So we have here considerations in conducting qualitative researches like ethical issue. As I've mentioned, for example, we have to record the observation. We need to ask permission if we can do video recording, and we need to ensure, of course, on data privacy policy on how this gathered information or interview extracts or field notes or video recordings or audio recordings will be treated in your research. And of course, for scientific issue about deception and modification, this is also related to data privacy as well. So please watch this video for you to be able to get more information about what is qualitative research.
What is qualitative research? Qualitative research is a type of research that involves collecting and analyzing non-numerical data to understand concepts, opinions, and experiences. According to the University of Utah, qualitative research is a process of naturalistic inquiry that seeks in-depth understanding of social phenomena within a particular natural setting. So, rather than relying on statistical and numerical data, qualitative research methods rely mainly on people's words as the primary data. These require qualitative analysis and do not require sophisticated statistical treatment. As we can see, and contrary to the popular belief, qualitative research is not a method of research, but simply a type of research. However, we may speak of the term qualitative research methods, and if we do so, we are exactly referring to the different methods of collecting and analyzing qualitative data. Qualitative research is commonly employed in the humanities and social sciences, in subjects such as philosophy, history, education, sociology, anthropology, and literature, with the aim of gathering in-depth insights into a problem or generate new ideas for further research. This type of research is also used to explore complex topics and issues or understand how people experience a particular phenomenon. According to Ashley Crossman, qualitative research has long appealed to social scientists because it allows the researchers to investigate the meanings people attribute to their behavior, actions, and interactions with others. See Ashley Crossman, An Overview of Qualitative Research Methods, ThoughtCo. Hence, unlike the methodological rigor of quantitative research that relies heavily on numerical data, qualitative researchers filtered all observations, interpretations, and analyses through their own personal lens. This is the reason why, as Preeta Bandari suggests, researchers who employ qualitative research methods should include in their methodology a thorough explanation of the choices they made in collecting and analyzing data. See Preeta Bandari, An Introduction to Qualitative Research. Some of the common types of qualitative research methods are the following: historical research method, archival research method, oral history research method, ethno-linguistic research method, case study, process documentation research method, ethnographic research method, and naturalistic research method. While so much for the meaning, nature, and dynamics of a qualitative research, we will discuss the specificity of these types of qualitative research methods in our other video lectures. So stay tuned.
So that ends the lesson in qualitative research. And please, if you have the luxury of time, or if you can make time to go over other materials about qualitative research, if you are conducting a qualitative research now or a part of your study is a qualitative research, it will benefit you a lot if you will have that kind of initiative. So God bless in your writing journey, and I hope you learned something about this discussion on conducting qualitative researches. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. Goodbye, God bless, and happy writing.